Whoa. Let's get into it. Man, let's have a discussion today. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I'm going to probably make a few people mad, and I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to be honest and look at the scriptures and, all that. I could give y'all the Christian TMZ vibes. I comment on everything, but I'm not going to do that. This is my new space, man. It's my new office. I had to make some adjustments. So I got my bedroom in here now, my office here, the bedroom's there. So I can do a video with y'all and go take a nap. All right, don't forget this little icon right over here. I'm warning you, do not listen to this album out streaming live. Go get it, stream it. Money back guarantee. I will give you back the pennies that I get from you streaming it if you don't like the album. All right, but let's have this conversation, man. Let's do it. Let's have a conversation. Because this debate has been going on for a while, and I would like to solve the puzzle. This is the theological wheel of fortune. I would like to solve the puzzle. All right, but first things first, welcome to CNN. I'm Kirk Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, you do this with me because you with me. We take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. So ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to go to Kirk. Even if you don't like and subscribe to the channel, fine. But go to kirkkennedy.com and find you something there. Everybody's covered. All right. The title of this episode is Why You Shouldn't Care About Calvinism or Arminianism and all of that. Let me give you a quick background. Most of my evangelical Christian life, I was exposed to what we would call being reformed, Calvinism, that bent, right? And I looked at the scriptures, saw it, and there were things that I cannot refute that came from not necessarily, Calvin, but the people who followed him, right? There are things that I think are there. And then over time, I would hear what people who are sort of on the opposite side. Like I came into this world where, actually, you know what? Let me do this, man. Let me give y'all a little bit better because I need y'all to get this smoke. Let's do this. Let me pump up the volume, dance. All right, let's get it. So I came into this world and was like, okay, I can see this. I was never comfortable saying I'm a Calvinist, never. Because I'm just a street dude or whatever, but I always thought, hold on one second. My brother, I'm on Patreon. The link will be in the description. You can check that out. Thank you, brother. Great album. I don't know who you are on Facebook, but I appreciate the love. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate that. Album is tough. I'm the best pastor rapper out. It's not arrogance. It's honest. All right, but let's get back to this. So I come into what's called Reformed theology, Calvinism. I never called myself a Calvinist. I thought it was weird. Maybe because I'm a street dude. I'm just not going to just be on nobody's jock, old school language, right? And then I came across some other teaching that was called Arminianism, where it's sort of the opposite of Calvinism. Then I found out that, the tulip, the 5 points of Calvinism, are refuting sort of the 5 points of the remonstrant, which is Arminianism, right? And so there's all this drama. I'm not going to get into all of that. If you don't know what Calvinism is and Arminianism is, go look at it on YouTube and figure it out. Here's what I want to say to you today. Should you care about Calvinism or Arminianism? And I'm going to tell you, no, you shouldn't. It doesn't matter. Let me tell you why. This is going to make my Calvinist brothers angry. Brother, how could you? Now, I'm still reformed. I still believe a lot of the things that certain things teach, but I'm nuanced. I have a nuanced perspective, and you'll see why. So stay with me to the end of this video, because I'm not trying to shame anybody. I just think I'm going to get into these reasons why starting right now. Here's the first reason why I no longer care about Calvinism or Arminianism, these categories. Here's the first reason why. Both of these doctrines, both of these systems of belief, Calvinism is a system of belief that begins with God's sovereignty. He's in control of everything. No dispute. It talks about God electing, choosing people before the foundation of the world. there's all these doctrines that come with it, right? Then you got free will. Well, no, we choose. So if I were to sum up in a brief sentence, Calvinism versus Arminianism boils down to, did you choose God or were you chosen by God? Let me tell you why both of them do not matter at all, and I do not think God cares at all. It is a human argument that has caused more division in the church than the necessary. Let me explain why. Stay with me, because I know there's some people out there who subscribe to Calvinism. Like, what is he saying? I thought he was it. Hear me out. Hear me out. All right. You know, I don't play around with the scriptures. I try to be honest. Let's talk through this. Here's the first reason, right? Let me take this banner off. It's hard for me to take the banner off of saying great album. Ha ha ha. Yes, this will be available for replay. It'll be on the YouTube channel, Kirk Kennedy's Corner. It'll be there, and it'll be there on the. All right, but let's get to this. Here's the first reason. Both of these doctrines, these systems of belief, are trying to resolve tensions the Bible doesn't resolve. The Bible doesn't resolve. You will not find one credible verse where the authors of the Bible, Paul and in particular the New Testament and others, they had no problem acknowledging the vast scope of how salvation occurred and what that means. They were the ones who wrote this. They didn't, as far as we know, didn't struggle with this, because they're not trying to resolve tensions the Bible doesn't resolve. So let me give you an example. The Calvinists, I was elected. You can't choose God unless you're chosen by God. That's sort of the reformed, reductionistic, but Calvinistic way. So let's go to this verse in Acts 16. Listen to this. Acts 16, beginning verse 14. One who heard a background, Paul and them are preaching the gospel in Thyatira, right? And they mention this woman Lydia, right? So they're preaching the gospel to all these women. And then it says this: one who heard us was a woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira, a seller of purple goods, who was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what was said by Paul. It says by Paul. That's because I couldn't add the L, that ran out of characters. All right. So it's clear the Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what was said by Paul, and she eventually gets saved. You cannot dispute that. You cannot fight that. This is saying the Lord opened her heart to pay attention to it. He gave her the grace to listen to what Paul said, and then eventually she responded and became a strong believer in the early church. You cannot refute that. There are other verses that highlight this. But there's a ton of verses, though, that give no indication that people's heart were opened up by God to believe, but that they did work on their own. So case in point, Acts 17, all right, listen to this. Now, these Jews were more noble than those in Thessalonica. They received the word, so Paul and them are preaching the gospel. They received the word with all eagerness. Listen to this. Listen, examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so, right? Many of them, therefore, believed, with not a few Greek women of high standing as well as men. So let me make sure you understand what it's saying here, because this is the ESV. It's essentially literal. And the way they talked in Greek, Koinonia Greek 2,000 years ago, we don't talk like that. They put words in places that we don't. That's why we have different translations that kind of modernize what was said so that it just makes sense to us. Let's look at the sentence structure here, all right? Stay with me. Don't make me laugh. All right, listen to this. It says that they received the word with all eagerness, okay? Examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. So they are listening to Paul talk, all right? They are reading the Old Testament. I don't know how they have access to the scriptures, but they are reading the Old Testament to see if what Paul is saying is true, right? And then listen to verse 12. Many of them therefore believed, all right? So the therefore is kind of in a weird place, but therefore is always looking back to what was said previously, okay? So therefore they believe. So many of them therefore believed. Why did they believe? Because they were examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Therefore, many of them believed because they saw it in the scriptures. And then it gives prayer. The Bible does not say that God opened up their heart to believe. It doesn't say that often. It says people responded. The thief on the cross. If you're a Calvinist, you have to believe that before the foundation of the world, God opened. But the Bible doesn't often say that. It does say that certain passages, But what we're doing is we're taking the exegesis of Calvin, and it's true. I think if you say that election is not a biblical doctrine, I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. But if you say that people choosing God is unbiblical, I think you're wrong. I think both of them are at play, and you'll see why more in a second. It's not a tension that the Bible is trying to resolve. The Bible does not care if you believe you were chosen or you chose him. But yet all these theologians do. There are YouTube channels given to shaming people who don't believe one doctrine or the other. It's not biblical. Let me prove it more even so. Here's my second reason. So the first reason why I do not think you should care, or why I no longer care about Calvinism or Arminianism, is because it's their doctrine. The Bible doesn't resolve some of these tensions. Their free will and chosen or chose him is a tension in the Bible. I can show you plenty of verses to show you that both are happening at play. It's not one versus the other. They're both there, right? Here's the second reason why, though. The second reason why I think saying, well, I'm a Calvinist, so I'm an Arminian. Here's the second reason why I think you shouldn't care about it, why it doesn't matter. Because Paul said that it's worldly to do so, right? Paul said that. I don't know how we got to this point where we're arguing over if you're a Calvinist or you're an Arminian, or if you're mainline, or if you're Greek Orthodox, or if you're this, if you're that, if it's Coke, if it's Pepsi, if it's Jordan, if it's LeBron, if it's Kirk Kennedy or Lecrae. It should be Kirk Kennedy. Stop playing with me. Stop playing. But the Bible doesn't care. Paul said that that's worldly. Let me prove it. You don't believe me, and I get it, because you're stuck on your theological position and you think I'm a heretic right now. Actually, if you really stop and think about heretic, it really just says he or tick. So it could be a tick. Never mind. Here's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3. Walk with me. Here's what he says. For you are still of the flesh. Why? Why are you still of the flesh? Talking to the Corinthian church. You are still of the flesh. For while there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not of the flesh and behaving only in a human way? All right, so he sets the context. You are of the flesh. You are acting of the flesh is not biblical at all. It's not godly at all. When someone says you're of the flesh, it means you're sinning. Paul's saying you are sinning. There's jealousy and strife among you, right? Strife is argumentation. You're willing to argue over these things. There's jealousy and strife among you. You're behaving in a human way. Why? Why are they behaving in a human way? Why is there jealousy and strife? Here's what he says in the next verse. 1 Corinthians 3. For one says, I follow Paul, and another, I follow Apollos. Listen to the question. Are you not being merely human? Listen to what he's saying. For one says, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos. Are you not merely being human? Let's replace Paul and Apollos with the two categories today. I'm a Calvinist. I'm an Arminian. Are you not being merely human? This is the Bible. This is Paul said this. This is Paulinism. You're not even supposed to say I'm a Paulinist. I used to say I'm not a Calvinist, I'm a Paulinist. Paul wrote the New Testament. Paul wrote it. But now Paul's saying, what are you talking about? That's being merely human, right? Don't forget, now there's jealousy and strife. How many arguments have you seen over Calvinist versus Arminian doctrine? People calling each other all types of names. Let's keep going with the verse, because that's not enough. Here's what he says in verse 5. It's 1 Corinthians 3, right? What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. What then is Calvin? What then is Jacob Arminius? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned. Who are they? They're nothing. This is Paul. This is Paul saying this. This is Paul talking about himself. What then is Paul? Paul is the most influential Christian in all of history because he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. And he said, what then am I? I'm an instrument. So if Paul is saying that about himself, we're supposed to argue over saying I'm a Calvinist? I'm supposed to argue over I'm an Arminian? Man, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm reading the scriptures wrong. Let's keep going. Look at this, verses 6 and 7. He said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants, Paul, I planted, nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. Replace Paul and Apollos with Calvin and Arminian. Calvin planted, Jacob Arminius watered. I'm just using the examples. It doesn't matter who, but God gave the growth. It's neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. Paul is saying it is, and look at all the strife and jealousy that I've seen people argue. I've seen so many people who I think are genuine believers arguing over this and acting like I'm better than you because I'm a Calvinist. Let me say something to my Calvinist brothers. If you truly believe your doctrine, if you truly believe that you were chosen, you believe of nothing of your own, you were chosen before the foundation of the world. If you truly believe that, then why are you so judgmental towards people who are not Calvinists if they just haven't been chosen yet? If you really believe that it was of no doing of your own, but God chose you, then why are you offended at people who say they chose God? If your doctrine is accurate, then they haven't been chosen yet. And it's a gift they haven't received yet. Why are you offended at them, though? And if you're an Arminian who thinks you chose God, why does it bother you if Calvinists think your salvation is set regardless? If you chose God and are a believer, then you're a believer. If you were chosen by God and are a believer, then you're a believer. So who cares? Like, why does that matter? Paul says it's worldly. He says you're acting in a human way. Look at this. I follow Paul. I follow Apollos. Are you not being merely human? So if the scripture is saying you are being merely human for siding with the perspective, how does being a Calvinist or an Arminian not fall into this category? Shoot the messenger. Shoot the messenger. Shoot me because I'm for all of it. I'm with it. Shoot the messenger because I think it's foolish. I've seen many people sinning against the Lord. Man, all these people understand the doctrines of grace, but I kid you not, some of them do not understand the character of grace. You got the doctrines of grace down, cool. But the character of grace, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, you do not show that towards your other brothers. 1 John 4:20, the man who says, I love God, but hates his brother is a liar. For you cannot love God whom you haven't seen if you do not love your brother whom you have seen. I just think some of this stuff is stupid, but I digress. Let's go to the next example. Another reason why you shouldn't care about Calvinism or Arminianism, why it shouldn't matter to you. I'm not saying don't believe one. You can side one, but don't let that your doctrinal beliefs define your characteristic traits. Like the fruits of the Spirit, Galatians 5, Colossians 3, Ephesians 4, 1 Peter, 2 Peter 1, verses 5 through 7. Those are define how you act. There's nothing about that says you have to. Well, let me keep going. Number three reason. Here's a reason why I could care less about Calvinism or Arminianism and why you shouldn't either. Here's a third reason. Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4. Now, I've said this before in a different video. Man, have y'all read this passage? If you don't believe me, be like them believers in Thessalonica. They were in not Thessalonica, but where was this at? They were more noble than those in Thessalonica, whatever this was. Be like them, right? Search the scriptures. Look at Daniel chapter 4. What happens to Nebuchadnezzar? Fam, let's look at a couple of these verses. This is why I think who cares what Calvinism. Listen to this. So this is Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, right? He has a dream and it's kind of frightening. So he calls out for Daniel, and Daniel has the interpretation of the dream. And this is what he says to Nebuchadnezzar. Listen to this. This is the interpretation, O king. It is a decree of the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the king. So the dream that you had, what I'm about to tell you, is about you, right? And here's what he says in verse 25. That you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you till you know that the Lord Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. All right, let's review this again. So this is a decree. So let me give you a quick background. Nebuchadnezzar was walking on his palace, right? Walking around like, look, man, look at what I did. Look at what I accomplished. All this is me. And the Lord said, oh, really? Okay. Because you talking like that, I'm going to basically strike you down. I'm not going to send another kingdom to come and take it from you, but I'm going to strike you down. And this is what's going to happen to you. You are going to you're going to be like the beast of the field. You'll be eating grass. A human being, you'll be eating grass on all fours. You're going to be wet with the dew of the morning like animals, right? And 7 periods, that's 7 years. So for 7 years, you are going to live like an animal, eating grass. And then after that 7 years are up, then you will know that the Most High rules the kingdom and you will give glory to God. This is what is happening in Daniel 4. So why should you not care about Calvinism or Arminianism based on Daniel 4? Thank you for asking, let me tell you. Listen to what God is doing here. God told Nebuchadnezzar that I'm going to punish you for your arrogance. And here's how. I am going to take away your cognitive ability to be a functioning human being. You are still a man, but I'm not going to allow you to think like a human being for 7 years. In fact, you're going to live and look to some degree like an animal, despite the fact that you were the most powerful man in the world at the time. I am in control of your cognitive ability to act like a human being, not you. And I'm going to embarrass you because of your arrogance and show you that even if you try, the only reason why you are a functional human being is because I allow you. So I'm going to take that from you to show you who's really in control. Woo! Why does this matter with Calvinism and Arminianism? Because one of the main arguments is over free will versus sovereignty or whatever, like free will. Did God choose me or did I choose him? Here's the reality, brothers and sisters, using Nebuchadnezzar as a test case. If the most powerful man in the world has to be subject to God, like God can take away his cognitive ability to think like a rational human being, then that means you and I, Calvinist or Arminian, the only way we function as rational human beings is if God allows us to. If God decided that you and I are going to live like an animal, we're going to live like an animal. If God decides right now while I'm recording live that for me to forget what I'm saying or lose the cognitive ability to talk with my hands, I will cease to do so. You and I can't even breathe unless the Lord sustains us. So all the people that reject God are dependent on God to give them the breath and the cognitive ability to reject him in order to reject him, which means you can't believe in God unless he gave you the cognitive ability to do so and sustains your life. People are arguing over, did you choose God or did you choose him? I say, how are you even breathing to make the choice? Who's sustaining that? You can't breathe if the Lord says that's a wrap. So you're talking about you chose God and chose him. Well, who gave you the cognitive ability to understand what was even being said? Who gave you the breath in your lungs to breathe? Who gave you the mindset to be able to process whether or not you believe this or not? We are all dependent on God. He sustains us. He's the only being that doesn't have his existence connected to someone else causing him to exist. So in the biblical sense, there is no such thing as free will anyway, because it's limited at best. It's limited. And what I mean is, I'm not saying that we don't make actual choices. I do not believe that God has ordained every choice. I believe that God allows us. I think it's both. I think he ordains some things and he allows us and he uses what he knows we're going to do to carry out his purposes. You can't make a decision unless you can't reject God. You can't choose him unless he gives you the cognitive ability to do so. You just can't. So all this free will talk is nothing, because you can't choose him unless he sustains you, gives you the cognitive. You are dependent on God. So you are not, our free will is limited. We make free decisions, but he sustains our ability to think. This is why atheists and stuff make me laugh. It's like, fam, you don't know this, but you can't even reject God unless God allows you to do it. Because you can't breathe on your own, fam. The universe isn't helping you breathe. You know how? Because if you go into the universe, you'll die. You can't breathe. The universe ain't giving you life, because the universe will take it as soon as you go too far. You go into a place where you get locked in a room where there's no oxygen, the universe ain't gonna give you that. Your ability to function, like Nebuchadnezzar, God is showing, I can take that from you, fam. I can take that from you. So like all this talk about who chose what and who did this and who has this and who believes this, man, you can't even think, you can't even breathe unless the Lord allows you to do it. He could take your mind like Nebuchadnezzar. So why are you arguing over the choice that you made or that you were chosen, when the reality is you need God to sustain you, whether you were chosen or you chose him? It's stupid to me. And all these people are arguing over this, and God, you and I thinking people aren't really saved and all that. What's sound doctrine? And this isn't sound. And so let's get into sound doctrine. This is the fourth reason. This is the fourth and final reason why you should not care about Calvinism or Arminianism. Just be a Christian, man. Just love the Lord. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't have doctrinal beliefs. Have them. But don't put so much stock in those doctrinal beliefs that you're arguing with people who disagree with those doctrinal beliefs, unless they're clearly appropriating something the Bible is sinful. I cannot find a credible translation. I cannot find a credible translation. I read a lot of them, even the Greek and the Hebrew. I cannot find somewhere that it is sinful to think that you chose God or were chosen by God. If I'm wrong, my Calvinist brothers or Arminian brothers, I'm open. I'm wrong about many things. Please hit me in the comment section. Show me the verses that say if you don't choose God, or that's a sin to God, or it's not sound doctrine. Let's look at that. Here's my fourth reason why you shouldn't care about Calvinism or Arminianism. All right, here's a fourth and final reason. Sound doctrine. Let's talk sound doctrine, because boy, if you're a Calvinist and you don't believe in the tulip, you don't have sound doctrine. If you're an Arminian and you believe in the tulip, that is a doctrine. Those are doctrines from hell. You do not have sound doctrine. With all due respect to my Calvinist and Arminian brothers, shut up. Because here's what the Bible actually says about sound doctrine. Let's get into it. Listen to this. 1 Timothy 1:10. Listen, we're going to use passages that actually use the word sound doctrine. Let's talk. And if I'm wrong, come at me, baby. I'm giving y'all a snippet. I'm ready. You can't win, rock, right? Watch this. Walk with me. 1 Timothy 1:10, right? So he's summarizing the obedience. It's obedience. And he says this. And he's talking about who's going to make it and who's not. And he says this. The sexually immoral, men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine. Okay? Now think about what he's saying here. Look at what he's naming. He's naming sin. He's naming obedience. He's not naming intellectual theology. He's naming categories of the flesh that are, he says, that is contrary to sound doctrine, right? So he says sexually immoral, men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine, right? So sound doctrine then must be the opposite of these things, because these are contrary in its activities, its actual functions, its actions, its sin. It's, look at this, sexually immoral, enslavers, liars, perjurers. This has nothing to do with how a person primarily thinks about their salvation. Sound doctrine here is talking about how you live, not just what you believe. But there's more. You probably thinking, oh, that's just one verse, Pastor Kirk Kennedy, you taking it out of context. All right, but let's keep going. There's a couple more. Let's go. Let's go to Titus, right? Let's go to Titus. Here's what he says. Young pastor, here's what he says to Titus. Talking about qualifications for an elder, right? Here's what he says to Titus. He must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also rebuke those who contradict it. So sound doctrine is how you was chosen or chose him, sound doctrine. Let's keep going. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's keep going. He says, so he has to rebuke, though, give instruction. You know what instruction is? Instruction in sound doctrine. Instruction is how to live. I want to encourage you, exhort you to live a certain way. I don't know, and I could be wrong. I could be wrong about this. I could be wrong about everything I'm saying. I don't know how believing that I was chosen or chose him affects how I live as a Christian. I don't know. Actually, I've heard people reject the Lord, like, well, I guess I wasn't chosen. People used to tell me that, well, I guess I wasn't elected. So I was like, bro, why aren't you concerned about that, though? Because if you're not elected, if you're not chosen and you're not a Christian, then there's a punishment. There's a reality for that too, right? Listen, he's saying, look, you got to give instruction, exhort people in sound doctrine, right? Then he goes and says this, for there are many who are insubordinate, empty talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision party. Listen, they must be silent since they are upsetting whole families by teaching for shameful gain what they ought not to teach, right? One of the Cretans, a prophet of their own, said Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons, right? Says this, their testimony is true. Therefore, rebuke them sharply that they may be sound in the faith, not devoting themselves to Jewish myths and the command of people who turn away from the truth. Do you understand what he's saying? When he talks about sound doctrine, he must be able to refute, though, look, as empty talkers, deceivers, right? He must be able to refute, to give instruction. Sound doctrine to Paul was not, do I believe I'm chosen or chose him? It's not intellectual. It's not what I agree with here. It's how do I live? Sound doctrine for Paul was equivalent to how you live. That's why he's giving all these categories. They're empty talkers, deceivers. They're teaching what they ought not to teach. They are liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. Therefore, rebuke them sharply that they may live sound in the faith. See, sound doctrine to Paul makes you live sound in the faith. If you don't have sound doctrine, you don't live sound in the faith. If you believe you were chosen or chose him, that's not a biblically sound doctrine because it doesn't necessarily lead to you living a sinful lifestyle. You can be sound in the faith if you believe you were chosen or if you chose him. You cannot live sound in the faith, though, that if you believe that you need to be circumcised, like he says in verse 10 here. Listen, there are no credible Bible passages that emphasize the importance of sound doctrine on you or I believing that we are chosen or chose him or many of the other points. It doesn't really matter. It really does not. You have to be sound in the faith in your obedience, whether you chose God or were chosen by God. It is not a tension the Bible resolved. Paul calls it worldly, right? It is not it's not what sound doctrine is. These guys act like sound doctrine is Calvinism. No, it's not. Sound doctrine is sound faith, is sound living, is believing truth to live a certain way. There's nothing about the tulip, maybe perseverance of the saints, maybe that, but total depravity, unlimited, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible, those have nothing to do with my day-to-day living. They don't affect me at all. Neither do the 5 remonstrants of Arminianism. They don't have anything to do with how I live day to day. Maybe perseverance of the saints encourages me to keep going because God will keep me. But apart from that, they don't have anything there. Let me end with this. Standing in Titus, he says this, but as for you, teach what accords with sound doctrine. Listen to this. Teach what accords with sound doctrine. Okay? And then he explains what sound doctrine is. Look, older men are to be sober-minded, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith, in love, and steadfastness. Older women, likewise, are to be reverent in behavior, not slanderers or slaves to much wine. They are to teach what is good. Teach what accords with sound doctrine. Right? What is it? Older men must be sober-minded. There's no sound. There's no tulip in the sound in this lineup. There's no tulip anywhere in here. There's no free will. There's no all these. There's no none of that stuff. It's like older. That has nothing to do with being an older woman or older man, right? It doesn't have anything to do with it. Now, listen. Some of you are going to jump in my face. I don't care what Calvin said. Don't tell me what Calvin said. I know what he said. I've been essentially reformed for the last 20 years. I still believe a lot of those doctrines. But I just feel like, you know what? As I see the Bible, I've realized that modern Western theology, especially coming out of the Enlightenment age, the Enlightenment period, a lot of the apologetics became sort of like so in the age of Enlightenment, there was the rise of the scientific method, right? Hypothesis, testing, and then theory, right? Reason, I think, therefore I am, right? All these things became like more important than faith. And so a lot of the apologetics was pushing back against that sort of scientific method where no more faith, you need proof. So then you start trying to prove that God exists through things like the cosmological, teleological, ontological arguments, right? You get into these apologetics that are almost trying to match the scientific method. And so you start teaching things and trying to prove things and resolve things that the Bible just doesn't resolve. And we're not supposed to resolve all these tensions. That's a part. Some stuff, I just can't make a person see it. You can't always resolve the tension of evil existing and God being good. You can't always resolve that. You can't resolve some of these tensions, and I don't think we're supposed to. I think modern theology and even some form of apologetics has taken the shape of trying to prove things that the Bible says require faith. 1 Corinthians 2:14. The man without the Spirit of God does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God. And this so that you do not, he just can't. They're spiritually discerned. They are foolishness to him because they are spiritually discerned. So yeah, you have verses like Peter, who do you say that I am? You are the Christ. It wasn't flesh and blood that told you that, but my Father in heaven. Whoa, how did that even happen? I just said that thing good. That's true. But then you have plenty of other verses where people are just making a decision, choosing to follow God. The Bible doesn't resolve the tension. Now, you can believe one or the other. That's fine. But don't believe the lie that the people who don't agree with that doctrine, it's one thing if they're agreeing with a doctrine that's sinful, but there is no credible Bible passages that say you have to believe in the tulip or you're not saved, or it's not sound that you're not sinful. It just doesn't. You have to believe in Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life, and then you live according to that. Romans 10:9-10, if we confess with our mouth and believe in our heart that Jesus died from the dead, and we're saved. It's not if you confess in your mouth and believe that you were chosen before the foundation of the world. That's doctrine and stuff that helps us understand that God's plan of redemption is not just circumstantial, but actually has been unfolding for some time. But we're not supposed to take those doctrines and say, I follow Arminian, I follow this pastor, I follow John MacArthur, I follow this pastor, I follow R.C. Sproul, I follow it. Yes, fleshly, it's human. But what do I know? What do I know? I got to go pick up my son. Y'all got me fired up right now. Listen, don't forget, man, go to KurtKennedy.com. Stop. Hey, listen, man, cut it out. Cut it out. Cut it out. There's a lot of merch out there, but there's no merch like these. Cut it out. Go to KurtKennedy.com. I got the fit. Look at that. Sunday vibes. See, I live in the East Coast, so it's cold for us. Sunday vibes hoodie. But I know some of y'all still live where it's warm. Get you a Sunday vibes shirt right here. Look at that joint. Look at the nice, clean white dude. Sunday vibes for you. Look at that. Nice, clean, like nice, attractive, half-faced white girl. Sunday vibes. Go ahead and get you that. I got all of it. Got all of it. Thundercat lifestyle. We ain't going for believe until you leave. Believe then leave. Go to KurtKennedy.com. We got all of it. We got all the fit. We got everything you need. Don't die twice. Remember when Rick Ross and them were like, YOLO, you only live once? Yeah, but Revelation 20:15 is the second death. Don't die twice, right? We got the fit there. Go check that out, man. I appreciate y'all. It's Christmas. It's time to get gear. I got you. Go to KurtKennedy.com. Get you some gear. Play this video back. If you think I'm wrong, you can come at me in the comment section. But if it's a long dissertation, man, my thumbs hurt. I ain't responding back. If you think I'm wrong, cool. Make a video and talk about it. All right? I don't think you should care about Calvinism and Arminianism to the degree in which people do. But I'm saying if you have a belief, stick with it. I ain't saying throw away your beliefs. I'm just saying, man, your beliefs should not define your character if it's about this type of stuff. Your beliefs should be in line with the fruits of the Spirit. That's more important. And I promise you that God is more pleased with people who love, have joy, have peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control, righteousness, mercy, right? Who don't keep a record of wrongs, who are not rude, who believe all things, hope all things. He's more pleased with that than if you really believe that you were chosen before the foundation of the world, or if you chose him. I just think that stuff is worldly, it's stupid, and I think many of us should get a pair of scissors and cut it out. All right? Grace and peace, y'all. Don't forget to go to KirkKennedy.com, show your love, get me some merch, like and subscribe to the channel. The links will be in the description. Patreon, listen, Cash App, whatever y'all want to do. Understand this money's tight, but it's Christmas. We try to work it out. I get it just a passing salary. Appreciate y'all, man. Thank you.